I am here today with Venita Benitez, the president at National Freedom Day, a 501c nonprofit organization. Check out their website, www.nationalfreedomday.org. And she serves as vice president executive board at Project 1619 Incorporated, www.project1619.org. How you doing today, Venita?
Great, sir. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm so impressed, with just like the advocacy you're doing for human trafficking and just the in modern slavery. And I was reading in the Black News article that was written about you that you became aware in 2006 of the issue of modern slavery. How can you describe that time and why you decided to become an advocate for human trafficking?
Whew. Now that's a long story, but I'll try to make it short by saying that initially I was completing my genealogy for the Covenant Church, who the pastors had completed theirs and wanted us as members to do the same. And so there was once I believe he's no longer with us, but his name was Kim Clement. He was like an evangelist. So he was speaking at our church at the time, and he kept hearing the letter E. So the whole congregation thought it was, at the time, Texas was deregulating energy. And so they thought the E stood for energy. And I simultaneously heard, "It's you," this audio. And I'm like, what do I have to do with that? And as I completed the genealogy, it stood for England. So I immediately contacted my family in England, and I never ever had been in any contact with them at all. So this is the first time engaging in what I would say a developed relationship. And so I contacted them, told them that I descend from England and I wanted my family crest. And so they told me to prove it. Dr. Hamilton, who was my cousin, proved it. And lo and behold, 2 months later, I went over to England to witness the 400th anniversary of the King James Charter for America. But there was a revealing or an unveiling of a tapestry, and that tapestry showed the existence of the 400 years, basically, or I wouldn't say 400 years, but the initial settlement. And in it, the tapestry took 26 years to stitch this tapestry. So it's not just any kind of tapestry. Queen Elizabeth stitched, her husband did a stitch, Prince Charles did a stitch, as well as her mother. So it's a very important tapestry that now sits in the basement in England. But anyway, one of the panels had 1619 on it. And as I was looking at the first arrival of the first Africans, I started researching slavery. Started Modern day slavery started popping up, and I didn't understand what is modern day slavery. So I contacted the United Nations. They had just kicked off the Blue Heart campaign against human trafficking. So I started following it, and I realized, oh my God, we have modern day slavery. We have human trafficking happening in our world today. And I had no idea. So, based on what the United Nations sent me, they sent me a book defining human trafficking and what it was and what it is, and the state of the world in regards to human trafficking. And as I looked at one of the pages, it said that we had 300 million slaves in our world today and
Wow.
an additional 249 children between the ages of 2 and 18. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? And so I started following it. And Barack Obama, at the time, President Barack Obama, in his first 90 Days in Office, issued a human trafficking awareness proclamation and describing what human trafficking was and that we had to end it in modern day. And so ever since then, I became an advocate for the children mainly, but for anyone that is caught up in that.
Can you share a pivotal moment or experience that shaped your commitment to the cause?
Well, it ties into the International Day Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade. And when I looked at uh, the United Nations is issuing a resolution in 2007, effective in 2008, for the International Day for the Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery. They have a huge program that they put on in 2008 right there in New York City. Well, I've come from England and realized that that is not the landing place uh, of the first Africans that landed. It was in Hampton, Virginia. So why are you having it in New York City when I'm clearly dialoguing that it happened in Hampton, Virginia? So that was a pivot moment when I actually started to advocate the International Day in Hampton, Virginia. And I got with the mayor of Hampton, put on the event, tossed roses um, into the bay and commemorated it the next year. So that was a beginning moment. And I also had the mayor of Hampton, Virginia, issue the first proclamation for the transatlantic slave trade. So from there, I had an understanding that, hey, this needs to be challenged. It can be challenged. And I started challenging it. And a very lonely place for anybody that is advocating on something that no one understands, especially in 2006, 7, 8, and 9. Nobody was talking about human trafficking. They weren't talking about
Right.
slavery. So it's a very lonely place. Whereas now it's talked about, but then you couldn't even talk about sex trafficking in any programs. The word sex trafficking rattled people, and now it's publicly seen on television now. So it's just really different.
In 2025, what are the biggest misconceptions the public has about human trafficking?
Let me ask your thoughts on it. You tell me, please. I, I'm not the expert. I'm just an advocate. You are expert too, an advocate. Everybody's an advocate. What's your thought?
Well, I think like that there is a lot of like misconceptions about like what human trafficking is, and that some people like actually who have been human trafficked just from like our past research wouldn't even necessarily realize it. That's something and stuff I've noticed, like because I've interviewed sex workers in the past, and like
Uh,
when they're telling me their stories, like that is human trafficking, that people don't understand, like the imbalances in power and dynamics of that sort.
yeah, well, that's it right there. What I can say from the initial steps of wanting to combat human trafficking and where we stand right now, when Barack Obama was president, I think it was, and I thought, oh my God, how could it be a 10 million um, dollar industry or $10 billion industry? It's $150 billion
Wow.
industry now. So if we were advocating back then, how did it increase to the point that it's increased right now? And this isn't only around the world. This is America. America, they have pinned us as the demand
What do you see as
atrocity. And I'm like, no.
what do you see as the most significant challenges in raising awareness and combating modern day slavery in the United States?
Its existence. Most people can't understand that something like this is really happening. How is it happening? Um, it's so many different ways you can look at this. May I ask you to repeat the question?
Yeah. Uh, what do you see as the most significant challenges in raising awareness and combating modern day slavery in the United States?
Mm, that's interesting. Some people say that it's the legal system. We don't have enough attorneys or a system that supports it to prosecute. And but for me, it's getting it into the homes where we're educating our children and our teenagers. It's a tough subject to talk about that we have people kidnapping children and putting them through the sex trade and how difficult it is to find them when it does happen. And if we could just get that understanding and that point across to the younger generation, it would really take us light years ahead because then there'd be cognizance of, hey, who's watching them? Whether it's in the church, in their home, when they visit their friends' homes, because it could be our uncle, it could be our aunt, that's a madam. They don't know. They don't know. It could actually be a postman or a postwoman that actually is looking at the schedules of children when they come home, what time the parents come home, what time. It's many, 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 many factors. But awareness is the most important thing, is to know it exists. Yeah.
That's a really great answer. How do you
Thanks.
assess the effectiveness of current national efforts, such as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, in driving real change, advocacy, and impact?
Well, in that sense of the matter, the United States State Department has the answer to that. They have a database of every member state, and member state under the Declaration, not Declaration of Independence, but the I can't think of it right now, but we are a member of it. And a lot of countries are like maybe 174. So we need to be able to look at those member states and get commitment from those member states that are part of the United Nations and make sure that we are monitoring their commitment and their efforts to end modern day slavery. We need a commitment globally.
Yeah, I agree. I think like, that would definitely which leads to my next question, which would be about what strategies have you found to be most effective for educating communities and policymakers about human trafficking?
The very first thing that I would say, and probably the only thing right now, is to pull up every proclamation that has been issued by each president since 2010 and actually look at these proclamations and read them and read what it says, because America is combating human trafficking right now, and we're not too happy about it because we're seeing things that we don't like. We're uncomfortable with illegal importation.
Sure.
So we are in the midst of combining How are we going to end modern day slavery without understanding that we can't manufacture here in the purchase other products from other countries without considering manufacturing here, because on a global level, they're using children.
Yeah.
So if we actually look at every proclamation from Barack Obama to President Trump to Biden to present day President Trump, we will read those proclamations and we will actually be able to see what's going on in America right now. What they're really trying to do is end modern day slavery. That's that's the boiling point, is to end modern day slavery in our lifetime. And it's uncomfortable. It's very, very, very uncomfortable.
One of the big criticisms of the Trump administration, because human trafficking is like one of his main goals, but a lot of people feel that he's too focused on child sex trafficking and is overshadowing like labor trafficking. What do you think about that?
I think that I don't want to say that people are wrong, but again, if they looked into the human trafficking awareness proclamations from these presidents, it's in detail what they got to do. And the executive orders are in there. It's just that they didn't know how to go about it. And really, it causes such misery on on humanity that it's really a sad thing, but we must do it. President just alone in manufacturing, bringing all the manufacturers back here to the United States. Well, that's inside the Human Trafficking Proclamation. Buy America. That's in the Barack Obama's proclamation. Buy America, but buy American. Workforce is in there. People haven't, I've been following the proclamations. That's why I have became an advocate. And I say some of the things that I say is because I have concrete evidence that anybody that wants to know anything about human trafficking in America and what they're planning on doing is in those proclamations and executive orders. That's the trip to me. I'm like, why aren't anyone just reading? They will see the state of America. They will see where we're going just based in those proclamations. That's why I'm prepared now to see what's happening now. Does it hurt? Yes, but it's a must. And that is what President Trump is doing right now. It's not only that he's focusing on the sex trafficking. I don't think that's enough, personally. But definitely the overall picture, even Make America Great, is inside those proclamations.
Right.
We just haven't paid attention that they're done every year for a reason. Some people stay under the radar, like myself. I've stayed under the radar for 16 years. Now I have to present myself. But I've been doing and taking action under the radar because it was a lonely place where people, friends, family, they leave you. They don't want to hear about slavery.
Right.
They don't want to talk about it, especially
It makes people
2006, 7, 8.
uncomfortable.
There you go.
It makes people uncomfortable. I'm so proud though of the work you're doing.
God
And
bless you.
yeah,
Thank you.
it's amazing. Can you discuss a recent campaign or initiative you're particularly proud of?
Oh, well, yes. It's not recent, but it was back in 2012. I'll tell this little quick story. President Barack issued the proclamation against human trafficking, or human trafficking awareness, I believe that George Bush, before he left office, like even like days before he left office, he presented a proclamation. But let's just take it to President Barack Obama. So President Barack Obama issued the proclamation in 2010 in January, within 90 days of his office. Within by December 11th, I want to say, or 10th, he issued another proclamation for that year, the following year, remember? Uh, yeah, he had to do two of them. Anyway, the next year, he issued another proclamation, and I kept reading these proclamations. They didn't even have the United States, from the president. They didn't have anything. It was like a press release. And so I wrote them. I wrote, and it wasn't a kind letter, and I certified it. And I told him, I'm sick and tired of seeing it in a press release. When are we going to see it in hard copy? Well, that president sent me the original copy of the Human Trafficking Awareness Proclamation. So I own it.
That's nice.
Yeah. So to me, that was huge. Do I hang it up or anything like that? No, because we still have modern day slavery and the fight is still on. And a lot of people get upset with me for not, displaying it. But I still feel we have to fight this, and we can, and we will.
How do you measure success in your advocacy work, policy, and prevention?
Mm, I don't. I don't know what I'm doing, to be frank. I just care and I love. So let me just wheel it back a second. When I initially came back from England, and I started looking at, well, how do you write these mayors for change, the State Department? How do you do this? And I came across a person online, and then we became very good friends in 2007. And his name is Ronald V. Myers. And Dr. Myers is the founder of Juneteenth. And we became friends. And he told me how to document everything I do as many articles as possible. He taught me how to get the first proclamation through the mayor of Hampton International Day for the remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. Dr. Myers taught me, because he was on the move to actually get the Juneteenth or June 19th a federal holiday. So we were teaming up. And so he took me under his umbrella, and I'm very grateful that he mentored me through this. And so I was just a diversity program manager on a DFW airport project. I came off the project, completed my genealogy, and now I'm on this, I want to say, Holy Ghost quest, because it's not something that I would want to do or wanted to do in my lifetime. I didn't even think about it or know about it, but God did. And he placed it on my heart and put it in my mind, and I couldn't shake him. So he was the one that opened the doors. When you pray, what happened to me back then, I was, being really rude, to be honest. I wanted to talk to God. I wanted to see God. I wanted to speak to him one morning. And so I was praising and worshiping for hours at a time. And then I heard this audio voice again, said, cover yourself. And I got mad at him, and I said, cover myself? What do you mean cover myself? I don't have any scarves or anything like that. And I pointed up to the ceiling at that time. And I just said, wait a minute, I'll be back. And I went in my bedroom and I got this white negligee and I flipped it upside down, put it on my head, pinned it, went in the bathroom, the safety pin, let it drape all the way down, went back in the kitchen, and I said, I'm here. Now what? And all of a sudden, I heard this pop in my ear, and my son at the time was 9 years old, and I fell to the ground, and he fell to the floor, and that's when I heard the children crying, the screams. They were they made me. I can feel when I try not to recall that because the crying that I heard and the screaming. I remember being passed out for hours, and when I woke up, there was a puddle of hate to say it, mucus. I want to say snot, mucus, spits, whatever, from me crying out. And I asked my son how long had I been on the floor, and he told me hours, Mom. I just watched you to make sure you were okay. And it was that. And that's what, between that and reading the United Nations book that they accidentally sent me, they hate I have it. They won't even publish it anymore, but I still have it. That we have 300 million slaves in our world today, 249 additional are children between the ages of 2 and 18. That's what happened to me.
Wow, that's incredible. And you mentioned Ronald Myers, being a mentor of sorts. He's from my hometown, Chicago, Illinois.
You knew
And
him?
no,
You
I
or
didn't.
heard of
I knew
him? Heard
of
of him?
him. Yeah, I've definitely heard of him. Like I've never met him. He passed away, unfortunately, and
Yeah,
you know,
2018.
I
Yeah.
wish I had the opportunity to meet him, but I have heard of him, and just like an incredible person, like like you said, like the creator of Juneteenth, and he also ran like several organizations. Benita, there's
And he was
people,
an MD. He was a doctor.
right?
And he traveled all over to help
That's
sickle
important.
cell. He
That-
was very, very, very
yeah,
adamant. Hmm.
an incredible legacy. And I was wondering, like, what can people like, watching this interview, just regular people at home who care like you do, because I feel like, like anybody like, with a heart is gonna feel like, like watching this interview, that this is an important issue, but what can they do to get involved in meaningful ways to help end human trafficking?
Well, one, they can contact me at my email is Venita@nationalfreedomday.com. Um, the second thing, pull up the United Nations Blue Heart Campaign to combat human trafficking. And even being a part of a larger worldwide organization to read their information, to get familiarized with it, they can do that.
Definitely. Uh,
Yeah,
I would describe you as a modern day abolitionist.
that's what
You,
they say.
yeah, I
Thank
believe
you.
that, like, I think,
It's
like,
an honor.
the work you're doing is so important. You're on the right side of history. And, we live in a time where I see, like, I feel like there's so many people who are not on the right side of history. How do you maintain hope and resilience in the face of such difficult issues?
I honestly believe because I heard the voice of the Holy Spirit, God, or call him anything you want, whatever anybody wants to call him. But when he gets in your face or in your ears to do something, you can't shake it. And just imagine, worked over 23 years in the construction industry doing diversity program management. There are a lot of engagements, community engagements that you have to attend. And one of them was at this time golfing. I like golfing. And the Lord spoke to me the day before, and I asked him, how long do I have to tie my head up? And he said, until I tell you to take it off. So I had a golf tournament the next day. I was like, wait a minute, what are they gonna say? And so when I walked up with my head tied up, they said, Benita, what you got on your head? I said, divine intervention. Leave me alone. And I told everybody, who asked, it's divine intervention. And it was like 7 years. Like all the stuff that I had to do, I walked around. And for the Blue Heart campaign against human trafficking, I was so adamant that I threw away, well, donated all my clothes, and everything I bought was blue. So in a lot of my pictures, you're going to see me in blue during that time. Blue earrings, blue dress, blue scarf, blue hat, whatever I wore, I had to show blue in support of the Blue Heart campaign. Crazy, but I did it.
Wow,
And
yeah,
I was in my 40s. I'm 65 now,
that's a lot of commitment. I feel like, that the being committed to a cause, I think like a lot of times like people say that they are committed to things, but then they don't want to do the choices that are hard. Like, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's his distinguishing characteristic because it's like sometimes it's like, do you want to do what you're called to do or you want to do what you want to do? Because it's so much easier just to do what you want to do sometimes, but like when you actually have purpose and you're sacrificing and making those efforts, I feel like, that's definitely like a difference.
It's a lonely place. Nobody believed. So you start telling them that you're hearing God or you're hearing the Lord's voice. You no longer are you looked at as the possibility as a messenger. I think that hurt me the most. It's like they didn't really take me serious enough to even look like what was I doing in my life that was so different that if I told someone that the Lord spoke to me, that it would be a big, huge disbelief.
And but also the Bible though, the great leaders of faith kind of dealt with that. Imagine like Noah, like when he was building the ark, or
Oh, yeah.
even Moses when like he's leading the people out of Egypt. Like people were kind of like sometimes visionaries and people who are creating change can be looked at like historically as crazy. Even like someone like um Edward Marconi, who invented the radio, when he had the idea, his friends put him in like, a mental hospital because like they said, like, he had this idea of transmitting sound without
Yeah.
wires. And that sounded
Right.
absolutely crazy to people. Like, we need to put you in a psychiatric hospital. And, I think that's
Yeah.
what are your priorities for the coming year in your advocacy work?
Well, right now I'm working as vice president of the board of executive board for Project 1619. I named Project 1619 back in 2011. After the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade in 2009, once we got that documented, then we started to do like an annual event. But it was in March 25th is the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims. But August 25th is when they arrived. So we got it established in Hampton that the transatlantic started there, not in New York. But now we have to take it to the actual month that it happened, and it happened in August. So That's when we stopped doing the event in Hampton in March and made it in August where it belonged.
Benita, some of the greatest journalists in the world like to watch my YouTube videos. How
Oh,
can media and journalists better support the fight against human trafficking?
bring more awareness, more programs. Actually, when people are actually doing programs in January, it doesn't have to be throughout the year. It should be, but January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and I believe January 11th is Human Trafficking Awareness Day. Start promoting, first of all, just talk about the Human Trafficking Awareness Proclamation that a president is signing. Be there when he's actually signing it. Request it. Get some news media on him actually signing it next year for the 250th anniversary of the country. Be the first to actually be in the room when that proclamation is signed. And
Well,
inside the proclamation, that's how I own National Freedom Day, because in each of the proclamation, February 1st, National Freedom Day is there. It is the day to remember freedom.
Benita, it was such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining me. You're welcome back anytime. I'd love to have you back
Thank
again.
you. I love you. You're so handsome and
Thank you.
so your smile is infectious. It's gorgeous. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for inviting me.
I really appreciate you. Of course, you're welcome back anytime. I really appreciate you. You're beautiful as well.
Thank you, sir.
You have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.